I pretend that I can give Buddy singing.
I wasn't asking permission. I do whatever I want on my show.
Well, I don't know why you told me.
Just part of the conversation. I like to tell people things that they can react to.
Okay. That's what I read. You probably could have predicted my reaction anyway.
I did.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna look for something while what's up, Fred? So he does everything from out there, the way he is?
Yeah. I hope he doesn't have his finger on a trigger.
What would that?
When you run away, he might shoot you. No things amiss. Push the button, Fred.
Does he do a sound test before he gets started, or he just?
I just asked him that. He said everything's fine. Guess he was listening to us when we. No, well, he just put the mics on. So I don't know.
Believe it or not, I had 2 DVDs that were not readable.
couldn't record on, and that's why the delay.
Okay, so how much longer?
Pardon me?
How much longer?
Should be starting right now.
Okay, don't need a sound test.
I'm sorry?
We don't need a sound check?
No, I've been monitoring.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to Viewpoint, the show with an attitude. Today we're going to have a show that's based around a historical perspective. A well-known gentleman in the community for many years, and I hope you'll find it enjoyable. We don't have much time, so I advise you to pay attention so you'll learn something. My guest is Thomas P. Whitten, who was for more than 28 years the executive director of the John Hope Settlement House in Providence. He was there so long they named a street after him. So without further ado, welcome, Tom.
Thank you very much, Tom.
How you doing today?
Good.
Okay,
Good.
You've been having fun. John Hope Settlement House is familiar to a lot of people who live in the city of Providence and the South Side community. And Tom Whitten's name has been synonymous with the John Hope Settlement House for many, many years. And he retired from that position not too long ago, and he's now written a book about John Hope Settlement House. And I urge you to get a hold of that book and really learn some history about a nonprofit settlement house in the city of Providence for many, many years. Tom, I know you're not originally a native of Providence or Rhode Island. Where did you come from?
Well, a lot of people ask me that question when they see me. Say, where did you come from? I'm from South Carolina, the northern part, little place called Anderson County. And I was actually born in what was equivalent to a log cabin. It wasn't a log cabin, it was a house that was built by cross ties from the railroad track because my father worked on the railroad and he took these cross ties that go under the track. He built a house, and turns out that I was born during that time. So,
What did you live in before you built the house?
well, we lived up the hill on the farm. We were actually sharecroppers for a while. And it's a long, long story, but my father eventually tore the house down because he was being unfairly charged rent by the owners of the railroad company, and he tore it down, and we moved back to the farm.
So you came to Providence in what year?
Actually, I came to Providence the first time in around 1965. I came as the executive director of the International House of Rhode Island, and I stayed here for maybe 2 or 3 years I went to the Providence Human Relations Commission from there, and then I went to Boston.
Yeah, Providence Human Relations Commission. That I remember that. Did my sister work for you?
She certainly did.
Okay.
She worked for me when I became the executive director, but before that, I was a field investigator
Okay.
for the Providence Human Relations Commission. And after that, I went to Boston and Bridgeport, Connecticut, and worked down there in a community center similar to John Hope. And ultimately, I came back to the Human Relations Commission as the CEO, or rather the executive director. And I went back to Bridgeport again, to the same place where I was before as the associate executive.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, when I came back to Providence, it was 1977, to John Hope Settlement House.
You like Providence, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely. We always knew we wanted to kind of settle down in Rhode Island.
Okay. To add to your other accolades, you've now written a book. And why did you write it?
Well, to start with, it was because Peter Lee, who was then my succeeding CEO at John Hope, asked me to engage in this, and I did, but it kind of became such a labor of love that I was glad he asked me. But I saw that there was so many good things coming out of John Hope, so many that had come out, so many good kids came out of John Hope. As I wrote, I just found that a story needed to be told. And it needed to be told because we needed something to counter the racism that is so insidious in our community in many instances. It's just a continuing saga. Sunday's newspaper, Providence Journal, had a lot of information in there about people who were chronicling their experiences as black people and people of color. But in all of those stories that were there, and there must have been at least 30, 40 people that told stories of their experiences as black people in Rhode Island. Nobody had anything positive to say about their experience, and there's a lot of positive things to be said too.
That's very interesting, because I haven't seen the story, but my impression from, my wife has read it, from it was I didn't recognize many of the names who were making that commentary as being people who have been here through the struggles that we've had through the years. I've been in Rhode Island and Providence for over 60 years, and I just briefly perused it, and I didn't recognize any of the people's names that could connect to the community turmoil or the community progress or anything like that. And I found that interesting. So I am going to read the story, but I surmise that it's going to be a different experience than what I have had as being a native, a resident of Providence and in Providence and South Providence in particular. You mentioned when you opened about a lot of the good things that came out of John Hope, and I can attest to that. My kids went to daycare there, and it was a place that I had heard about predominantly from the black community and from people who lived in the West End as being a place that they really enjoyed being in and got a lot of education, and they learned things at John Hope.
Right.
Now, what was the programming like?
Well, we tried to be the best at what we did. The daycare center was always the kind of shining star for John Hope, even in the down days, and John Hope has gone through ups and downs.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
Really, starting in 1929, they didn't hold another meeting for 10 years, and partly I think it was because of the Depression. But the second meeting was held at they then called it the Second Free Will Baptist Church. It's now Pond Street. But that's when they named it John Hope. That's when they named what was the Crispus Attucks Association, the initial name. after John Hope, who had graduated from Brown University, along with Henry Sharp Sr. And Henry Sharp Sr. ultimately became the Chancellor of Brown Hope. But when John Hope himself died, who had made a name for himself through education in the Atlanta University education system, President Morehouse College and so forth, Henry Sharp suggested that we name John Hope after him, and that's what the board did at Pond Street. But it was John Hope Community Association.
Okay. And what is the meaning of a settlement house? Because I had some experience there at John Hope some years ago. I think it was around the time that you were getting ready to leave and they were looking for your successor. And there was some discussion over I think changing the mission of John Hope, and there was argument that it had to be a settlement house. And could you define what's the difference between a settlement house and any other kind of thing like that?
Well, ultimately, the debate that you're talking about was whether they should change the name of John Hope or not. And this was the Long Range Planning Committee, which was a part of the whole development. They had a vote and they decided to leave it John Hope Settlement House, but there was the question of whether that would be confusing to people. Settlement started at the turn of the last century. Jane Addams started Hull House Association, and then settlement houses were essentially in communities to work with people who were coming in as immigrants, and they were being resettled in these settlement houses, and they were receiving services. But for black folk, particularly those who were migrating from the south to the north, the settlement house served the same purpose of helping them to get settled into their new area. So that's why they call them settlement houses. But ultimately, there's a little difference at this point of a settlement house and a community center.
One of the things that confused me when we were having this discussion was the fact that some of the board members, in order to be true to the concept of a settlement house, thought that they should change their concentration from black citizens to the citizens who were more recently and predominantly surrounding the settlement house, namely Hispanics. And that was one thing that I personally opposed because, as you know, there aren't a lot of services or organizations dedicated to the services of the black community anymore. There were maybe a handful, if that. And I was opposed to that, and I responded in kind. Actually, I got interviewed.
Yeah.
I found it strange that, because of this settlement house concept, that they were going to change the target from black citizens in the city to those who surrounded, which were predominantly Hispanic, and thereby eliminating a black organization and staying true to what was the concept of a settlement house.
Well, by that time, though, by the time I left, and I agree with you in terms of John Hope needing to remain serving primarily the black community, but not to the exclusion of others.
No, not to the exclusion.
This
was very clear.
And that's how it started. And it's stipulated in the John Hope Articles of Incorporation. It says to serve the black community, but not to the exclusion of others. And there were plenty of good reasons why it needed to serve the black community. I mean, for example, the discrimination that took place when black military people were not allowed to go to the USO in Newport, but one day a week, and because of segregation in Rhode Island. John Hope began to serve those black service people more every day. I mean, it became like a USO to them. So there was always a need for that. And John Hope, by the time you were talking about being interviewed, had become a statewide organization, not just confining itself to the Providence area. And the reason for that is because of the type of services that we offered. A lot of people didn't know that.
No, I certainly did not know that.
Well,
because what would be the reason for concentrating on the settlement if that were the case? I mean, if you go statewide, you obviously cannot take in all of the various ethnic groups around the state.
No, and it wasn't trying to. It was serving, it was providing a service to people who needed a certain service. Community organization, for example. We had an organization called Project Basic, which went as far as New Hope to help to organize individuals around housing needs. They worked with banks to provide low-cost mortgage money and to help when people were being foreclosed on before this time around now. Project Basic would have been right in the middle of that stuff, the foreclosing that's going on now. But that's the reason we were statewide. It wasn't, and it was the kind of service that was provided, still serving those people who needed it the most, and in most cases these were people of color.
Yeah.
They were black people.
I think I've probably taken you off subject a little bit. We were supposed to be talking about the book in addition to other things. So in the book, you've written it, and was there a central theme to the book and a central message to the book?
Yes, and that the central message is that that our kids are people that we are proud of. We've got stories of 30, 35 kids in the book who graduated from our either daycare center or from our after-school daycare, or in some cases the teen program, but they all had services at John Hope. And we've got stories of these kids. One young man who is a commercial airline pilot is featured in the book. A young lady who is a
commercial airline pilot. Oh, he was there when my kids were there.
Right. Well, it could have been.
No, he was.
I don't know when.
I know when he was there.
I know. I understand. Point being that, you see, these are things that I run into kids, and they know me, and they say, "I was at John Hope. Don't you remember?" Well, no, I don't. I didn't know you. I'm glad to know it. But the point is that there are stories like that we can tell about kids. Lawyers, doctors. One young lady who graduated and happened to graduate from our daycare center is teaching here in Providence. Actually two, but one Hispanic who couldn't speak English when she came to the daycare center. And at that time, we didn't have any staff who could speak Spanish. And she started in our 5-year-old, 4-year-old program, 3-year-old actually, and went for 3 years. And when she graduated, she went into the gifted program. I saw that as a testament that sometimes you can communicate with people in other ways other than language. Obviously, there was enough communication that took place, so she learned what she needed to learn to become an excellent teacher, and now she teaches at the Paul Cuffey School. We've got a teenager who was also at John Hope as a teenager. Now she's at Paul Cuffey. But one thing that we did that none of the other settlements or community centers, to my knowledge, ever did, and that is put youth on our board of directors in a serious manner, and they help to make policies just like all the other board members. You know, some of those people, like Frank Rose, for example, and I'm not going to try to name all of them, but Frankie, as you know, probably is the coach over at Central High School now, and people like that. Another young lady who worked for the Mohican Sun Indian tribe in finance was on our board. Her name is Paula Spiver Jett. We've had people like that. A young man is a PhD, teaches at University of Pittsburgh. James Ugley He went to, graduated from our daycare center, ultimately went through all of our programs, and he became a board member, got a PhD. He's doing very well. The point I'm trying to make is that, you know, there are a lot of those kinds of stories that we can tell. Now, that's not to say that they didn't have the same hardships because of being black. I mean, my mother always told me I had to be twice as good as any white person I was competing with for the same job. I'm sure they had to compete in the same fashion. But it didn't do me any harm to put my best foot forward all the time, knowing what the competition was. And this is what we encourage our kids to do, to do their best. You know, I graduated from an all-black high school. I compete with white kids, and I think I do as well as they do because of the people who were pushing me to do my best. And so, you know, it was never about integration. And, you know, some people think that black folk want to integrate because they want to sit next to a white person, and that they believe that they would learn better. We knew that we were getting hand-me-down materials from the white schools and we wanted to be where those first-hand materials were. We didn't want to sit next to someone who was white. But again, one of the things that I remember reading, and we talked about what was in the newspaper on Sunday, where one individual talked about feeling invisible when he walks down the street, you know, and somebody else, I think it was Casby Harrison was one of the ones, he mentioned that the kids needed to have encouraging role models. That is certainly true. People don't think about it when you're white, you know, because it's always there. That's where racism comes in. You know, you don't have to think about being a racist. What you have to think about is how do you not be a racist if you're white? And by that I mean that so many things come so natural. Even that you believe that it's natural for a black person not to do as well as a white person, unless it's in athletics.
Now,
yeah.
I understand that point. Were there any programs that you, while you were doing that you didn't get an opportunity to implement, if you can recall, or did you? Basically, when you were the director?
Yes, actually, the thing that I really wanted to do was to follow our kids. I got all kind of you know, reports from parents of how well the kids were doing, and I knew they were doing well because they went through our program, and this was no accident, as well as whatever they got from their parents. But you know, we could never really do empirical studies that impress folks who fund programs. And
why is that? Because you didn't have the funds to hire people like that? We
didn't have the funds to. We couldn't sell anybody on the importance, for one thing, of following these kids, and it would take a long time. But that's something that we did want to do. We weren't able to do it, and I guess in some ways, the book shows that this did happen because it chronicles those kids in the good places where they landed as they went forth.
Okay. Why did you choose? I know you had Cleo Clark was very instrumental in John Hope